I wanted so badly to be Speaker Weatherford's criminal justice chairman. And when I met with him and asked for that assignment, he said, Matt, I expect you to fix the death penalty. It is just wrong. It's a blight on our whole justice system that we have folks hanging around for decades when there is no dispute about guilt or innocence. I mean, Representative Lee is so right. That was such good debate. If there is any evidence that needs to be tested, we should exhaust it. If there's DNA, we should find it. If there's witnesses, we should bring them forward to a court. But when that has concluded, when that is over, when we've tested all the evidence, heard from all the witnesses, and we're left with just the frivolous motions, I think we have a responsibility to act. The things in this bill in no way prejudice someone's ability to make a claim of innocence or bring new evidence forward. But I would hope that you would think about some of the types of motions that are filed. I mean, think about being Mr. Nelson, whose 10-year-old little sister was brutally murdered when he was 12, and then having to sit through 32, 33 years of fights over whether or not a record was produced 20 hours after it should have been produced, when the killer has confessed and still maintains that he was the killer. I mean, imagine being the family of the victim, where the killer confessed, but the only appeals were about whether or not the judge should have considered the blood and hair of a tiny child who was raped and murdered in a car as an aggravating factor on a confessed killer. Imagine being the family of the victim of Daniel Barwick, a killer in Bay County, Florida, who stalked a young girl just out of high school because she was sunbathing on the beach, went into her home, laid in wait, tried to rape her. When she fought back, he stabbed her 37 times. And there were appeals for years about how many of those stab wounds occurred while she was alive as opposed to dead. I mean, should we spend years on these types of things? Or can we acknowledge that there are some motions that are simply frivolous? I mean, Representative Grant practiced criminal law. He and Representative Kerner would not let me put in this bill anything that would prejudice someone's due process rights. I mean, we had two of the most thoughtful, prominent members of the Democratic caucus, including the leader designate, stand up and say, there's a need for reform, but this isn't it. Well, if this isn't it, what is? I mean, I hope that no one has to sit down with these family members like I have and have them tell you about how these decades of appeals limit their ability to live their own lives. The notion that it's hypocritical to want to put these monsters to death and yet preserve innocent life in a womb, I can't get past that. There's a huge, I mean, how dare we on this House floor compare innocent, unborn life to the life of someone who's chosen to kill another in a brutal and heinous fashion? How dare we say, without sin cast the first stone? The sins that we commit on a daily basis, and I'm one of them, they don't compare at all to the people who take children, who go and abuse. I mean, there's a woman on death row now who was a caretaker for an elderly couple. She took them out into the woods, buried them up to their necks, and demanded their debit cards and their passcodes to go steal money out of their account. And when the elderly couple gave that information up, she just continued to bury them, killed them, buried them alive, confessed to the crime. And that person may die after the lawyers who are prosecuting her because she happens to be such a litigious death row inmate. My friend, Representative Williams, says that if you press the green button, there are some people who will be put to death sooner. And he's got me there. Absolutely right. There are some who will, but only those where guilt or innocence is not in question. We have 155 people who have been on death row for longer than 20 years. And yet we still have members of the minority party saying, we just need to wait longer. Let's just wait for the Supreme Court's task force, or let's just wait for this or that. I mean, sitting in the rooms with the family members of these victims, I can't look them in the eye, members, and tell them that they have to wait longer when there are confessed killers that ought to be put to death. My friend Representative Taylor is so right. Only God can judge, but we can sure set up the meeting. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Yeah.
Show the bill passes. Read the next bill.